Hi everyone. I thought I would show you how I make some of my botanicals, my powders that I use in my soaps and such. What I'm doing right now is putting some roots from late Boneset, which is an herb that grows here. And what I'm doing with this is, while it's still wet, which goes against a lot of people's logic, but I'll explain in a moment. But I pulled this out of the ground just moments before, washed it, and now I'm putting it inside a small food processor. And just going to give it some rough chops. So just a moment and I'll get that started for us. So I'm just shaking the container just to make sure that the roots are making contact with the blade. I could use one of my better machines, my home machines for this, but this works okay. The whole purpose of this is to create as much surface area as possible. If I just left these roots on the counter to dry out, it might take them a day or two. But if I chop them up like this, and then next you'll see I'm going to put them in the coffee grinder and get them even finer, I can dry them in about a half an hour. The next step here is to now put these in my coffee grinder. And I hate this coffee grinder. It does a great job, but it is a headache to get the top on. And I have had it for a while, but it's just not well designed. So I've run it through here for about 1 minute and it's already in smaller pieces. And now here I'm fighting with the top again. I hate taking the top off this thing. So I've got it pretty much ground down here, about as small as it's going to go for now. So you see, I've got these little fine particles. This makes it so much easier to dry. Now I'm just going to put these on a plate, put them in the oven for 200 degrees for about 20-30 minutes, and here they are. They're completely dried. So now, yep, I'm putting them right back inside that same coffee bean grinder. Sorry, I got tongue-tied. Which is another story that I should share with you all. But that's maybe for later. So just remind me, tongue-tied. Right, so I'm just getting all this in here and I'm going to give it another grind. All right, so I think we're almost there. It will create a cloud when I open it up. It always does. I do have a mask on my face, a paper mask, just to keep these finer particles out of my lungs. But you can see now we have a nice fine powder. Isn't that tremendous? So to the bottom right is that very powder that I made a little while ago. Above that is my own dock root powder, made from my very own dock. There's a little bit of oil that I'm going to use to moisten those powders, some calendula petals, and the rest of my ingredients to my oils, essential oils and such. And I'm going to be making this in my round lucite mold. I just like to use it. It's fun to see it as it rises up. I'm a child in that way, I guess. All right, so let's get started. Adding in my aloe vera and lye and sea salt. That this was one of my mother's recipes. She liked making her own dock. That's right. This is her recipe book right here. Someday maybe I'll show this to you, but basically it's all of both her cooking and her soap recipes all in one place. All right. So what's the next step? Well, that's to get the stick blender on this. And due to the oils I'm using in this, it's going to remain pretty fluid. I didn't use any butters in here and less coconut oil, so it's more liquid oils, olive oil and avocado oil and sunflower oil. I wanted this to remain kind of thin. So I've added the oil here to my 2 powders, and I'm just mixing those up. And then I'll be putting that into 2 containers that I'm putting my soap in. Now got this just where I want it, so I'm going to add in my calendula petals. Now, something I'll say about calendula petals. I love them. They're beautiful in soap. But when you cut the soap, they tend to drag through. So you either have to live with calendula petals in your soap and some drag lines, or perfectly smooth soap and no calendula petals. I suppose you could cut them very fine, but I think they would still drag, as do all botanicals. So I've now poured some of this into 2 containers, and now I'm going to add in my Boneset and my yellow dock. You might be surprised at the colors that these create. I think there's an assumption that yellow dock creates yellow soap, and there may be an assumption that that Boneset creates a brown. But I think you're going to be surprised at what it looks like when it's done. So now comes the pour. I have my 3 colors here, and I'm just going to alternate them, pouring them into my mold here. I tried to get this within camera view there. I know it's a little tough with something cylindrical like this, but hopefully you can see. And again, just doing alternating pours. And luckily, I see calendula in all 3 containers, so that did get nicely distributed. I suppose it's only fair that I tell you the story about what I meant about tongue-tied and why sometimes I stutter a little bit. And maybe this was, I'm not saying that it's the reason why I was victimized as a child, but it was the reason why a lot of my childhood was miserable. When I first started to speak, my mother realized that I didn't have any R's. I couldn't pronounce R's. I couldn't pronounce a lot of things. And it was almost my 4th birthday before a doctor finally decided to snip the skin under my tongue so that I could move my tongue freely. Now, you would think by getting that done so young, that solves all the problems, right? It doesn't, because your brain has already put in motion the way words connect with your tongue. And mine had connected differently than yours or other folks whose tongues have been trained properly. So I spent years in speech therapy as a child, and it helped. And it took me until I was a very young man before I could say the word refrigerator. I avoided saying that word at all costs. I would say refrigerator. And the same with animals. I called them aminals. That's the way my head put them together in my mouth. Even though I could look at a piece of paper and read it and understood what it said, it wouldn't come out. But here's a therapy, and hey, here I am. So again, I just did alternate pours all the way up the column. That's done. I'm just moving that out of the way. Then I'm going to bring in my heart mold and finish these up. So I'm just going to use my remaining batter to fill in these little hearts here. I've made hearts with a lot of leftover soap and have hearts in almost every color. Everything but red. Isn't that peculiar? I have black hearts. They're activated charcoal. Marianne actually got a few of those in her prize winning. So again, just alternating some colors here. Now, the one thing I won't show here is, because I'd already finished the video and then I thought about it after the fact, is I came back and I put calendula heads, dried flower heads, on each of these hearts. You'll see it here in just a moment. So here are the little hearts. I actually was able to get 4 of them, but didn't they come out lovely? You see the little pink swirling? Isn't that wonderful? That's what the Boneset does. I love that about it. There are a lot of reputed benefits to Boneset, and that there's a reason why it's called Boneset. You can research it online. Now, I didn't use a liner here, but that just came right out. Isn't that great? I'm not saying there are any great benefits to it because I don't know much about it. I think it's probably much reputed to be a lot like comfrey in regards to its bone healing abilities, but I haven't tested it myself. Now, I messed up on my cut. I didn't start the video soon enough, and I apologize. Once I realized it, I'd already cut them. But here they are, and now that they're cut, that brown will turn a little more pink like in those hearts, and I'll show you that in the photo. But thank you all so much. You stuck with me, and wow, I so appreciate that. You are wonderful, every one of you. You're just a terrific bunch of people. I will tell you that I feel better because of you. I'm not kidding. The fact that there was so much support here just blew me away. It really did. What can I say? But I'll get teary here. I've got to stop. But thank you all. You are truly wonderful, and I appreciate you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Goodbye.